Welcome, Truth Seekers. Welcome back. Great to have you with us for this special deep dive on behalf of the Great Awakening Report. I'm really excited about what we're going to unpack today. Our mission, well, it's to tackle your most pressing questions, the ones you sent in for the week of July 25th. And these aren't just, basic questions. They're deeply insightful, really thought-provoking inquiries coming straight from you, our awakened community. They challenge the narratives, don't they?
They absolutely do. And they push us all towards a deeper level of understanding, which is the goal.
Exactly. So today, think of it as a journey. We're diving into critical thinking, into discernment. Really, it's about finding that path towards higher consciousness. We want to seek truth, find clarity, and, connect those dots that might seem unrelated at first glance to see the bigger picture.
And the scope of questions you sent in is quite broad, which is fantastic. It shows where everyone's focus is. We'll be touching on geopolitics, definitely some talk around disclosure, personal awakening journeys, and even some spiritual practices. The aim here is really to share knowledge, offer perspective, and hopefully provide some, let's say, solutions or frameworks to help you navigate these incredibly transformative times we're in.
Couldn't have said it better. We've looked through all the submissions, and honestly, it was tough to choose, but we've got the top 5 lined up. Okay, then. Let's unpack this. First one up, and it really sets the stage. The question is, are we witnessing deliberate narrative engineering via crisis amplification across multiple domains? So the listener's basically asking, are these crises we keep seeing being intentionally blown up to shape what we believe?
Yeah, that's a powerful question. And based on what our sources are consistently highlighting, yes, a clear pattern does emerge. It seems crises, and these can be real, partly real, or maybe even just speculative, they are being selectively amplified by media, by political players, you name it. Tucker Carlson, someone our community often references, he actually calls this tactic fear scripts.
Fear scripts.
All right. Think about it. Geopolitical flare-ups, the lingering pandemic fear, those immigration disruption stories, even things like the scandal narratives that pop up. They get amplified, right?
Yeah.
Specific examples we've seen sources point to recently. Intense debate around the Epstein files, that's one.
Yeah.
The constant dramatization of what's happening at various borders.
Yeah.
And you definitely see it with coverage of any mystery virus. And the purpose behind these fear scripts, according to these analyses, isn't just reporting. It's about building what they term narrative infrastructure.
Narrative infrastructure. Explain that a bit.
It means creating a foundation of stories, of fears, really, designed to condition compliance, to get people used to reacting in a certain way. And, crucially, it distracts from maybe deeper, more structural truths. It's a way to maintain control, you could say, while keeping the broader power dynamics kind of hidden.
So when you look at it that way, it's not just about information. It's actively shaping your perception, potentially your behavior, maybe even suppressing dissent without you realizing it. And that's where it gets really interesting, isn't it? When you start noticing these same kinds of scripts playing out again and again across different events, it demands a conscious observation of that information flow.
Precisely. It's about recognizing the technique.
Okay, that's a heavy hitter to start with. And speaking of things that have a pervasive influence, let's pivot to something incredibly personal: health. Our next question comes from several listeners, actually, noticing a worrying trend. They ask, why are health crises among younger adults, from autoimmune issues to heart conditions, apparently rising, yet seem marginalized in the mainstream discussion?
Yeah, this one hits close to home for many. And the data our sources point to is, frankly, quite stark. We're seeing reports of a rapid spike, conditions like autoimmune disorders, sudden cardiac events, myocarditis, particularly affecting younger adults.
Wow.
And to put some numbers on it from the source material, 1 in 7 U.S. adults aged 30-59 has elevated 30-year cardiovascular risk. 1 in 7.
That's staggering for that age group.
It is.
Go ahead.
And even more concerning, obesity-related ischemic heart deaths.
Oh.
They reportedly surged 180% between 1999 and 2020.
180%.
Yeah. I mean, these are not small changes we're talking about. These are dramatic shifts. But what our sources find equally, if not more, striking is the muted response. That's the word they often use. The mainstream media, the big health institutions, they seem quiet about these trends. The interpretation offered is that this might be a kind of suppression or depoliticization of inconvenient public health reality.
So ignoring it almost, or downplaying it.
Or just not connecting the dots publicly, not giving it the attention you'd expect, given the numbers. The deeper implications just aren't really being explored in those mainstream channels.
It really makes you pause, doesn't it? You hear constant assurances about health system progress, safety, well-being, But then you see data suggesting young lives are facing this unprecedented deterioration. That contradiction, as these sources suggest, maybe it isn't just a simple failure. Maybe it points towards something more like a systemic cover-up or denial, something that, ultimately protects the existing power structures instead of tackling the root causes. It definitely calls for a higher level of conscious awareness when you're processing public health news.
Absolutely. The discernment is key there, too.
Okay, from health, let's shift gears again. Let's talk about the economy. Our third question gets right into it. Is the current economic recovery narrative masking deeper structural collapse engineered through credit and narrative control? So, is the story we're being sold about the economy just an illusion?
Well, many alternative analyses, the kind you might find on platforms like Zero Hedge or from commentators like the epic economist sources our community follows, they definitely frame the U.S. economy differently. They don't see it as a robust recovery. They describe it more as a managed bubble.
A managed bubble. Okay.
Yeah, and they argue it's being propped up artificially through things like market manipulation, opaque credit flows, and maybe even selective data interpretation, choosing the numbers that fit the story.
So it looks good on the surface, but underneath.
Exactly. While the headlines might shout about resilient growth, these alternative sources say if you dig into the deeper indicators, things like record margin debt, rising defaults on loans, shrinking real wages, when you account for inflation, you see signs of mounting fragility.
There's a gap then between the narrative and the numbers.
A significant divergence. And these analyses also bring up things like, say, the Trump-era tariff policies.
Yeah.
Portrayed often as being about national security, right? But these sources suggest they also align with a broader realignment favoring elite control. It's always worth looking at who benefits. Now, this economic dissonance, this gap we mentioned, are sources connected to potentially a much larger transformation underway.
Okay, what kind of transformation?
Well, the perspective offered is pretty profound. It suggests that a financial collapse or major disruption might not be an accident, not a bug in the system.
But a feature.
Potentially. A feature. A kind of controlled demolition, perhaps. A reset designed to usher in digital control mechanisms.
Like CBDCs.
Exactly like CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, and maybe broader universal compliance models. CBDCs, for anyone listening who isn't familiar, are basically digital versions of national currency, issued and controlled directly by the central bank.
Which raises huge questions about privacy, control.
Massive questions about individual economic freedom, surveillance, everything.
So taking that perspective, wow, what does this imply for our economic future? For your own financial well-being? It suggests that what looks like recovery might actually be a pathway to, well, a very different system of control. Requires some serious conscious awareness of these shifts.
It really does.
Okay, moving from the broad economy to something very fundamental. Our fourth question touches on food. Are global food system disruptions part of a coordinated strategy to enforce dietary compliance and supply dependency? This listener is watching the food supply chain closely.
And they're right, too. Our sources are definitely describing what seems like an increasing alignment. You see it between ESG policies, that's environmental, social, governance criteria.
Right, ESG, those policies, combined with very centralized supply chains and these sort of top-down food distribution models. The critique emerging from these sources is that these systems seem designed to replace independent local agriculture, the farmer down the road.
Replace it with what? With huge corporate-run, climate-branded food systems. Think large-scale, controlled, maybe less diverse food sources, all marketed under a sustainable banner. It's also pointed out how perceived climate emergencies, sometimes linked to natural cycles like solar maxima, by the way, these tend to intensify the push for these sustainable diet policies, which, ironically, often end up suppressing local food sovereignty. Traditional farming gets pushed aside. Now, to be clear, the sources usually state that no sabotage is proven. It's not about finding a smoking gun necessarily.
Yeah.
But they emphasize that the orchestration, the timing of scarcity narratives, the policy shifts happening together, the corporate consolidation in the food sector, all of this adds significant weight to concerns about engineered dependence.
Engineered dependence, that's a strong phrase.
It implies a deliberate move towards a system where people are reliant on these large, centralized sources for their basic needs. It's about observing how control over food is shifting.
And the implication for you listening right now is pretty stark, isn't it? If this trend continues, your access to food could become another lever.
Another lever of compliance.
Exactly. Just like money, just like medicine, potentially. when you connect these dots, the economic controls, the health narratives, now food supply, you start to see it as another layer, another part of what these sources often call the control matrix.
Oh, the matrix.
This web of systems designed to shape behavior, limit sovereignty, often using the very crises we experience as the justification, definitely requires a more conscious look at where your food comes from and who controls it.
Absolutely. Critical thinking is essential there.
Which brings us perfectly to our final question. This one really ties everything together. With credentialed institutions often dismissed now as corrupt or compromised, how can truth seekers like us connect the dots across all these different areas, political, health, economic, ecological control agendas? How do we make sense of it all when the traditional authorities, aren't trusted anymore?
That's the core challenge, isn't it? And the answer, according to our sources, isn't about finding one new perfect source to replace the old ones. No, true connection, true understanding comes through pattern discernment. It's about developing your own ability to see the connections, to observe the larger tapestry consciously, stepping back.
Okay, so pattern discernment. What kind of patterns should we be looking for?
Our source material actually highlights 4 key patterns to watch out for. They provide a kind of framework for discernment. First is narrative pipelines. That's seeing how multiple crises, multiple fear stories are often introduced around the same time, almost in tandem.
Okay, like a coordinated rollout.
Exactly. The idea is it creates this state of constant low-level fear or confusion, maybe making people more compliant without direct orders. Second pattern, data divergence. This is what we touched on earlier.
Whoa.
You see official metrics maybe about health outcomes, debt levels, mortality rates showing clear signs of systemic decay.
Hey.
But the way it's framed in mainstream reporting softens it, hides it, or explains it away. There's that gap.
Right, the gap between data and story.
Precisely. Third pattern, policy coordination. This is noticing how actions across different government departments or even different countries seem to align. Think specific DOJ investigations suddenly popping up, or new tariff rules, or those ESG mandates we mentioned. They seem synchronized across sectors, suggesting a common agenda.
Not just random initiatives.
Less likely random, more likely coordinated.
Yeah.
And the fourth pattern, emotional triggers. This is about recognizing the consistent use of fear, not as an accurate reflection of risk necessarily, but as the primary tool to motivate the public, to shape sentiment, to drive behavior.
Fear as a weapon, essentially.
That's how these sources frame it. And when you start piecing all these patterns together, the pipelines, the divergence, the coordination, the trigger, the conclusion drawn by many of our sources is that the overarching system appears to be orchestrated from the ground up, not coincidental.
Orchestrated.
Yes. And discernment in this context means really observing the invisible architecture behind each headline. It's about reclaiming your own sovereignty, your own understanding through clarity and, importantly, community awareness, talking about it, sharing observations. This capacity for conscious discernment, it's absolutely crucial if we want to move towards a higher state of awareness.
That framework is incredibly helpful. It really clarifies things. These 5 Q&A responses we've gone through, they really do form a kind of coherent map, don't they? A map of these underlying systems, these strategies. Together, they offer you, the listener, a multidimensional lens to view what's happening, to see these converging crises and narratives, especially as we look towards, say, 2025 and beyond. Each question peeled back a layer, control, manipulation, but also awakening. And linking them reveals that bigger transformation underway. It's about seeing the whole picture consciously.
It truly is. And all 5 of these answers, they really converge on one single powerful truth. That we are living through a profound transition. A shift from, widespread deception towards clear discernment. From a state of dependence on external authorities to one of genuine internal empowerment. The events playing out, they aren't random noise. The perspective here is that they are part of a globally coordinated shift. A shift designed ultimately to centralize control, often using the very convenient justifications of safety, sustainability, or crisis management.
And this is the crucial part, I think, within all that seeming chaos, there's this incredible opportunity.
Yes.
What our community calls the Great Awakening. It's this moment of profound conscious shift, not just for a few people, but potentially for humanity collectively. And how does it happen? Well, it happens by asking exactly these kinds of questions we discussed today, by challenging the official scripts, by recognizing those recurring patterns. When you do that, you, the truth seeker, start to see reality differently, not as just fragmented random crises, but maybe as a kind of staged production designed to direct human behavior.
And that recognition is liberating. In recognizing the design, you begin to free yourself from its influence. That's a fundamental step in reclaiming your conscious power, your sovereignty.
This is exactly how we connect the dots, how we piece together the puzzle, and ultimately, this is how we reclaim the narrative for ourselves.
Well said. And as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe let's just take a moment to focus on the keys, the essential keys for you to rise above all this noise, to consciously break free from that matrix we talked about, and to align yourself with a higher vibrational state, a state of being.
Okay, what are those keys?
First, and maybe most important, consciously choose to let go of fear. Our sources consistently flag fear as the master key of control. It's wielded deliberately, meticulously, to keep you trapped in lower states of consciousness, in states of compliance. Letting go is an active choice. Second key, make forgiveness and emotional clearing a regular practice. This isn't about condoning harm. It's about unshackling yourself from the past, releasing old wounds, dissolving that heavy energetic residue that holds you back.
How does that help?
Forgiveness restores your clarity. It powerfully reclaims your personal energy, your power. It creates space within you for a more conscious, more vibrant way of living.
I love that. And there's that powerful metaphor our sources often use, right?
Yes, you're either outside acting in the movie or going within to watch it consciously.
Choosing to be the conscious observer, not just the actor swept along by the plot.
Exactly. It's about perspective.
So remember, everyone, the path out of the matrix, the journey into higher consciousness, it isn't some switch you flip once. It's a daily choice. It's a moment-by-moment commitment, a commitment to awareness, to sovereignty, to alignment with your own truth. Until next time, truth seekers, stay awake, stay empowered, and